Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
In just a minute, our Morning Light panel will go behind the headlines.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Ensuring uninsured people get the health care they deserve. How Hope Within is meeting the needs of people, not just physically, but also spiritually and emotionally. Plus, you will hear from one of the doctors who volunteers his time at Hope Within.
The heart of this organization is extraordinary. I can't wait to hear your conversation. Well, as of 5 p.m. last night, federal loans and grants have been frozen for at least 90 days, beginning a top-to-bottom review of all federal spending. Apart from a handful of exceptions like Medicare and Social Security, everything from medical research and grants to nonprofits have been halted pending review. This is on top of the freeze on foreign aid.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper on this. According to the Tax Foundation, Americans will work from now until at least mid-April to pay the bill for federal, state, and local government. In 1984, President Ronald Reagan used executive orders to implement some $100 billion in spending cuts. Reagan charged his private sector commission to be tireless bloodhounds to root out waste. So as President Trump makes good on his overall of government spending, what questions and principles should guide his decisions?
Yeah, this is, good reminder, I think, Deborah, that we've been here before, that we have seen people charge the gates in Washington. Sometimes they get repelled, sometimes they win. It's going to be a wait and see.
Yeah.
Well, according to a new survey on Holocaust knowledge, get this, 48% of Americans cannot name a single concentration camp. 21% believe only 2 million Jews or less were killed during the Holocaust, not 6 million. Last Friday, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his wife, First Lady Laurie Shapiro, hosted the traditional Shabbat dinner at the governor's mansion with 95-year-old Esther Bratt. What was the goal? Well, in part to help reverse Holocaust denial and prevent historic amnesia on Nazi horrors. So what's happening? Is the flood of 24-hour-a-day news preventing us from looking back? Why are we losing our collective memory? We're going to take these questions to the Morning Light panel this morning. And these are heavy topics, friends, and I'm glad that you are here, very qualified to do it. Daniel Malinich, glad to have you. Perspective, I think, from your generation, so important because you are outside of the window of the civic collective memory. Cynthia Lyons, you're old enough to have talked to Holocaust survivors and have neighbors who are touched by that experience. And Pastor Dave, glad to have you back as well. Good to have a historian on a day like today. Let's talk wide shot here on government spending, government cuts, all of it. This happens every few presidential administrations where somebody campaigns against government spending and comes in like a charging bull. President Reagan got a lot of what he wanted, and then as soon as his commission recommendations went up, he was stopped by Congress. But here's where I think the challenge gets, and this is what I want to ask you all. There are progressives today saying this is heartless, unthinkable, and it's anti-human. And then you have conservatives who are saying, finally, we have gone too far, and if you're not looking at this politically, just as a Christian, how do we decide what is the right thing for government to do or the wrong thing when it comes to spending taxpayer money? Dave, I'll start with you.
Wow. So it is heavy morning, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I have been thoroughly convinced that as Christians, part of the task that we need to take on that we've handed over is the task of caring for one another. Mm-hmm. And we need to do that
handing it over from us to the government.
I think we have. I think we've handed it over to someone else can take care of it. It's too much. It's too messy. Whether that's caring for our youngest or caring for our oldest or caring for those who are in need, caring for those who have a disability of some kind.
Because that's a clear mandate in Scripture.
It is.
Right.
It is, absolutely. We are supposed to care for one another and not hand that or usurp that over.
Cynthia, your thoughts?
We have a lot of spending. And it's really, really difficult in this situation. And to be honest, I'm very caught in the middle because I think there's a lot of monies out there that can be saved. And yet I think some that are being spent wisely. You look at cancer research and you think, oh, we need that. And then we do have at the other end of the spectrum some monies that are being expended in areas that they really shouldn't. But Dave is right. We need to walk in love and make sure that those in need are taken care of. How do we do that? That's Scripture.
So when you hear, Daniel, your generation, when you hear you work from January through February to March to April, and then about mid-April, you're working for the government, essentially, to pay your state, federal, local tax bill. Does that surprise you, or does that feel normal? And I'm asking that not rhetorically, but sincerely.
It definitely comes as a shock the first time you're in high school, you work that job, you get that first paycheck, and you're like, I worked 60 hours over the past 2 weeks.
Who is FICA?
Why do, exactly. Why are these old people getting my money? Like, I worked for it. And so that's kind of the idea that crosses across a lot of plates is, wow, I do actually lose a lot of my money to the government, and I don't know where it's going, because a lot of these things are because other people paid into Social Security. Now we have to, so that they can get money from it, and it's all these but that doesn't really impact me. And so I think it goes back to what Dave was saying is we have this call to go love on people, evangelize on people, and often we think that means go to another continent. But it means go down the street. And we need to come back to embracing our community and loving on the people around us more as the church.
So there is a generation now that is growing up that does not know the fact that churches did these functions. They assume if you have a government program, there was a need that could not be met any other way, right? I mean, is that part of what you're saying here?
Sure, and I think my personal experience is I think churches are coming back to that because they are seeing a need. They're seeing a need in school districts, and they say, okay, everybody on Sunday, we're going to be delivering gifts something as quote unquote simple as that. I do believe churches are coming back to that. As a result of them coming back, the youth groups, the children's ministries are seeing that they can be involved in that and that they are coming around.
So let me ask this then. For people who are wondering if their program's going to be cut or they're going to have food tomorrow, because they have been dependent on, in a sincere way, on the provision of government, Meals on Wheels, indirectly funded through government programs. What do you say to their anxious heart this morning who are just hyperventilating, really concerned that this isn't going to be a pause, this is going to be a permanent overhaul of the way government works?
Well, I think the reality is hang in there. We're walking through a season of change. We're walking through a season where things are going to look different, and they're going to look different for a little while. Fall back into government is not the way to go. Fall back into community is definitely the way to go. I would encourage people, get engaged in a church, get engaged in your local community, get engaged in the things that are happening right around you, and watch what that will do in your life. We often have people walk into the church looking for help who have no engagement in the community whatsoever, and they've lost the governmental help, and now they're looking for something else, and we have to build that connection.
Yeah, and Jeff, not to interrupt, one of the things we've talked about is social media. And really, there's a negative side to social media. We know that. But is this a time that, as we don't like to broadcast really what we do, but is this a time to say, hey, I have a neighbor 2 blocks over really in need of blah, blah, blah. Is there somebody out there that could provide that and use that maybe now, maybe not forever, but in that time of need, possibly?
So my takeaway from this section of our conversation, be anxious for nothing, right?
Sure.
Right.
And then also reread the passages of Scripture, as you're saying, that talk about how you love and care for your neighbor, and don't assume the government's going to do it. Is that a fair assessment? Great. All right. Final topic today, which is our collective historical amnesia. I don't want to repeat the statistics, but really your generation doesn't have the same proximity to the Holocaust as the generation before. So let's talk about, I want to show you a clip. Governor Shapiro's office released just a little bit of it. Esther Bratt is 95 years old, a Holocaust survivor. She gets invited to the governor's mansion, and here's a bit of that conversation. I thought it was very moving.
You're an amazing person, and I really just feel in awe of being in your presence here.
It was what it was.
How about we go have dinner together? How about we have Shabbat dinner here together?
Oh, that's very nice.
It's pretty amazing. This is the governor's residence of Pennsylvania. It's the home reserved for the first family of our Commonwealth, a home that is owned by the state. And here you're free to express your faith. You're free to express your views. You're free to openly celebrate your religion. I know that's different from how your life started, but I'm really glad you can be in a place where you can celebrate that now.
We always say, God bless America.
God bless America. Greatest country on earth.
Pretty moving exchange there. Pastor, why do we have amnesia about things that we can see in black and white film, and where World War II veterans who are still amongst us that helped liberate those camps are still here and able to say it is true? Why do we have such a trouble believing that horrors could have happened?
I think a soundbite world doesn't dive in deep enough. When you sit and have coffee or tea or a meal with someone who's been through a tragedy or been through a difficulty or been through something that's shaped the world, you learn differently. You learn, and I think, as a young person, I was taken to nursing homes to meet people and sit and talk. Now everything's quick, everything's fast, and everything's soundbite, and I think that's a detriment to the ability to know and learn.
The power of story.
Right.
Cynthia.
I think it's dark. It's so dark, and we live in a world today of the words, anxiety, anxious, depression, and that certainly should elicit those feelings. But it's history. It's what happened, and don't we or shouldn't we pray for both sides of that story? Yeah. And we don't.
There's brokenness on both sides.
Absolutely,
right.
There's two sides to every story. One is terrible, but through the power of prayer, you hope to walk through that.
How do we remember? How does your generation learn and remember?
I think a lot of it is just this general disdain for learning, and since it's only covered in school, we don't have these people that we can go and physically take people to talk to and hear their stories. People don't know how many states there are. They just tone out about things in general. And so if you're a descendant of people and you know these stories, you have to get out and share those stories.
Let's run to get those stories while the Esters are still here.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Exactly.
Well, if you want to see this conversation again, I know many of you may want to share it. Lighthouse TV's Lighthouse TV app, Lighthouse TV Online, and your app store. I want to tell you, we just got folks from Hudson, New York, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Ua Beach, Hawaii, San Francisco, California, Davao City in the Philippines, where my mom is from.
There you go.
So all over the world, people are watching this conversation. Thank you for being a part of it today, and download the app if you can. Coming up on Morning Light, a Central Pennsylvania nonprofit provides health insurance to thousands of people who are uninsured. This ministry not only provides physical needs, but also spiritual needs too. We'll introduce you to Hope Within. That's up next.
A Pennsylvania ministry strives to share God's love with people in need, providing health and dental care and also education. Joining me is Laurie Reichert, Development Director with Hope Within. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Deborah. I really appreciate that. What
is Hope Within, and how did it get started? And also, when did it get started?
So Hope Within was originally a vision of Donata and Brian Sturgis, and that was in 2002 was a concept. And then the doors to the clinic actually opened in 2006. So I believe next year will be the 20th anniversary for the clinic. It is a free primary health care clinic for folks that are 250% below federal poverty level. So it's free primary health care services, some basic dental services, and that's done by donation. And then counseling is also available, and that's at low-cost counseling.
So you certainly provide a lot of service to many people.
Yes.
What is the mission?
So the real mission is to be a resource in the community to provide services at no cost or minimal cost to individuals that are in need of spiritual health, physical health, and mental well-being, and to be a resource for those people and to provide love and compassion to those individuals as well.
Now, you touched on some of the things you provide. Can you just expound on that?
Yeah, so the primary health care services are available, again, for folks that are eligible, and there's an eligibility application on the website. That also includes, though, vaccinations for children. So we do have individuals, parents that don't have health insurance, that may have children that are getting ready for school session for next year that may need vaccinations. So we provide those. We are in the Lower Dauphin School District, so we're really not far from the Harrisburg area. We also dispense medications. So we also have a pharmacy in-house for medications for folks that need that. As far as dental services, screenings, dental cleanings, and education. And then counseling services provided by graduate students at Lancaster Bible College. But it is fully staffed, and that's really available to anyone. You don't have to be a patient of the healthcare clinic, but that's provided on a low-cost basis for counseling services.
So what type of difference do you see that you are making?
Well, I believe that we make a huge difference. I mean, we're there for people that fell through the cracks, right? People that are between jobs and they don't have a means for health insurance. There's people that are working 2, 3 part-time jobs, and none of them offer insurance to the employee. So they're struggling to get by, paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have access. I think sometimes I call them high-risk individuals. There's individuals, especially, I don't want to say seniors, but older folks that are raising grandkids. And if the grandchildren get jobs, it can knock them off of their aid, especially Medicaid. Right. So you do have people that started out with some type of benefit or assistance, but because the household income has seen an increase and they got knocked out of their benefits and out of their Medicaid. So we do provide that assistance in terms of providing outlet for that, right, to seek medical services.
As you're providing all of these services, how do you weave the gospel in?
Well, oftentimes, if the person requests, we can certainly pray for those patients, and we have done that. But I like to say that God is the great physician. So while we're here, I think it's our stewardship to take care of God's people through love and compassion, to provide a means for medical services, health and well-being, and certainly basic dental services and counseling. So I like to think that we're just looking after God's people, regardless of how they come to us and where they come from. That anybody that crosses through our threshold, right? That if we can provide those services and do it in a very spiritual manner, I think that's fantastic. And
what is the reaction when you say you would pray with that person? How do they react?
I think predominantly, I would think the majority, in fact, I know the majority are just really relieved and welcomed and feel warmth and compassion that we can provide in what really is a clinical environment when you think about it. I mean, we are a beautiful clinic, and we are solely supported by donations.
And speaking of donations, you also have something besides the clinic. You have the Trove,
yes.
And that is regarding some of the things you have here. Tell us about that.
So the Trove originally started out as a pop-up shop, or what was termed as a pop-up shop. It was an annual shop that was done in the clinic, and it was usually around the holidays, and it provided a means for people to shop with all the proceeds that go directly to our healthcare clinic. And then in March of 24, so almost a year ago, there's a property that's adjacent to the clinic. Mm-hmm. It is now called the permanent residency for the Trove. It is a curated shop. This is a good example of an upcycled item. So it was one of our shop curators, Robin Bush, that took slates that were discarded and then painted those, and now they make great wall hangings, indoor and outdoor. And then the cutting boards that you see behind me and charcuterie boards, those are donated every year from a gentleman that's local that produces those for us and donates all of them to our shop. So all the proceeds go directly to Hope Within. Typically, we try to be open one Friday and one Saturday a month. Right now, it's all volunteers. So Audrey Shaler and Robin Bush pour out their hearts. I will tell you, they're totally committed to try to provide the shop with a lot of items that are seeing a second life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laurie, for being
with
us.
Having me.
Yes. And coming up next on Morning Light, a local physician who volunteers his time with Hope Within. He will share his journey and how he incorporates faith into his mission. We are back in 1 minute. Welcome back. In our last segment, you heard the mission of Hope Within. The ministry relies on both medical and non-medical volunteers. Joining me to share his journey is Dr. Jack Wright. Thank you for being with us.
You're very welcome. I'm honored.
Tell us about your role with Hope Within.
I'm one of the volunteer physicians that serve there, usually about twice a month for about 4 hours a day.
And how did God call you into doing something like this?
That's interesting. I've been in practice for over 40 years. And I always felt like God wanted me to do something on a ministry like this, but there was never time. I was a sole proprietor and then in a busy clinic and then did hospice work for 15 years, always understaffed, so there was never time to do it. But 2 years before I retired, the Christian Medical Dental Association, which I've been with for a long time, but never went to any of their activities, didn't have time, they had a breakfast within walking distance of our house. So I decided to go. And I said, God, lead me to where I should sit and who I should talk to, because I didn't know anybody there. And a lady sat down at the table, Anne Marie, who's the director of Hope Within, and we started talking. And I realized this was God's direction. So we exchanged business cards, and then when I retired 2 years later, I called her up, and they had a position.
So tell us about what you do there.
Primarily primary care. I'm family practice trained, and so I see children all the way up to whatever age, elderly. We do children's physicals for school, acute care, not emergency care, but a sore foot or a sore throat, teenage care when they come in, and then young adult, sometimes physicals for driver's license or for work, or chronic medical diseases that they may already have.
And how do you share the gospel with people coming in, with the people you treat? Because I'm sure not everyone is a believer.
No, they're not. But God speaks through the book of James that faith without works is dead. And I feel like that's my role, is to be the work part. We have people that are very appreciative, and they say, you've spent time with us, why did you do that? And we say, well, we feel like God has called us to do this. So if they're believers, I think they see it right away. If they're unbelievers, I hope that will pique their interest, and what would make you do this? And there's Bibles that people can take out in the lobby. They can take them home with them.
And when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned that in some cases you pray with them. Explain that.
Yes, I do. At the end of the visit, if it's appropriate, I will ask the patient, I say, we often will pray with our patients, would you mind if we prayed together? If it's acute illness, it may not be appropriate, and if the language difficulty is just very severe, I won't pray through a translator on a phone. But it's generally well received, and whether they're believers or not, they're very appreciative, and I think it really gives them a sense there's more to this than just a prescription.
Absolutely. I'm not sure how many times I've heard my doctor pray with me. I mean, that is just something you don't have, and right. I'm sure they are so appreciative of that.
They really are. I think spiritually it helps them. We're seeing them beyond just the physical ailment.
For sure. So what type of difference do you feel like you're making?
Well, I feel it makes a big difference. A family comes in with little children, and a lot of these countries didn't have vaccines, and so now they sometimes are required to have these vaccines. So where are they going to get them? They have no idea. Language can be an intense barrier. Some people are in between jobs, and they don't have any insurance. They have chronic medical illnesses. And where are they going to get their meds? These can be life-threatening conditions. And what's very interesting is a lot of times people will come from halfway around the world to visit family. Well, they don't have insurance here, and they bring as many meds as they can, but they need refills. So they'll come in, or maybe something happens and they can't access our health system. So they come in and we treat them as best we can. It's very interesting to do that, try to work through the different medications.
Yeah, I'm sure. But what you're doing is making a difference. Yes. And thank you for volunteering and providing care to people who need this care.
Thank you. I'm very, very privileged to be able to do it.
And once again, if you would like some more information, or if you would like to volunteer with Hope Within, they certainly do need some volunteers. Check out hopewithin.org. Stay with us. We are back right after the break. Up tomorrow on Morning Light, whether you are struggling with drugs, alcohol, or even pornography, it can have a crippling effect on your life. We will explain how Revelations of Freedom Ministries is helping people overcome unhealthy habits and get a fresh start. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you, Deborah. It's an important show tomorrow. Well, a few years ago, I visited Yad Vashem. That's the world memorial in Israel to the names and memories of millions of souls who perished in the Holocaust. It was there I learned the significance of a name and all that a name represents to a person. Think about it. To a family, that name is a connection. To your country. In one of the great halls, there was an exhibit under a glass floor of shoes. You have to be careful not to step over it. Our guide, Uri Feinberg, asked us to look at a single pair. Don't look at the overwhelming mass of aged leather and string, but a single pair. And then he said, sit and meditate on one person's journey Think about their lost hopes. Think about their lost job, their talents wasted, or a life's ambition. Sometimes it's easier, I think, to replace someone's name with a label. Think about how we do it. That's a homeless person. That's a Democrat. That's a Republican. That's a Christian. Oh, they're Jews. Oh, they're Muslims. Or they're from Pennsylvania. It's a lot easier to do that than ask their name and then learn their entire story, their beautiful story. God named the first human being Adam. You remember that. And in doing that, He set the standard. Every life valuable, every life designed with a purpose. That's the power of a name. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching. Check on your neighbors. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.